As I said to you prior to having a chat with Tim, the second coronial inquiry to do with the Christchurch terrorist massacre of 2019 is currently underway, and it is looking at other issues, and in particular the big issue here is how did the terrorist get into this country, what did he do when he got here, how did he get a gun, and all those sorts of things. And yesterday the police appeared in front of the coronial inquiry and essentially, and if I can paraphrase, said, well, we stuffed it up. Now, they didn't want to be quite that honest, which would have been useful, but they certainly didn't follow their procedures or their policies, and they might well have denied the opportunity for Tarrant to have been given a gun licence, from which he then went on to purchase weapons and was able to use them, practice his deadly aim, and then, as we know, commit the massacre of 2019. The consequence of that massacre, though, was that there was a knee-jerk reaction, as there often is from politicians and governments of the day, which essentially identified that all gun owners, particularly of semi-automatic weapons, were potential terrorists. And we all know what happened next. But to deal with that issue, and also the revelations in front of the coronial inquiry yesterday, and the ongoing view of lobby groups and mainstream media that somehow Nicole McKee is the very worst possible person to actually preside over some form of policy in this area, because, oh my God, once she in actual fact worked for the Shooters Association, I think it's the, well, we're about to find out in a moment. Joining us is Hugh Devereux-Mack, and Hugh, welcome to the show. What's your official title, mate, or is it just that you're an interested gun nut?
Interested gun nut is what they'd like to paint us at the other side, but my official title is the public spokesperson for the Council of Licensed Firearms Owners, who are a group of around 20 of New Zealand's largest shooting organisations.
And what would your membership be, do you think?
It's really hard to tell because we're all run by volunteers, so keeping track of individual memberships are difficult. Larger ones are the New Zealand Deerstalks Association, which have around 12,000 members and are growing at 5 members a day.
Okay, so one would assume that you are representative of tens of thousands rather than of tens of people.
Correct.
Yeah, okay. Now, yesterday, as I said in my introduction to this, there was a massive knee reaction because most of your members were identified as potential terrorists and needed to have removed from them semi-automatic weapons and a whole series of other weapons, and there was an amnesty and you got paid for it and all that sort of stuff. I'm interested in reaction now to the fact that, well, it all started from the fact that the police stuffed it up in giving Tarrant a gun licence in the first place. Is that your interpretation of what you saw yesterday in the coronial inquiry?
What we saw yesterday in the coronial inquiry was exactly that. So the firearms community has known almost within weeks of the original attack happening that this was the case, that police had wrongfully given a firearms license because we had members inside the police letting us know this had happened. Police then at the time came out and actually said that they had done absolutely nothing wrong and he was properly vetted. We now hear that after the Royal Commission report came out, a year and a bit later, that they'd made the mistake, then they owned up to that one. But now they're really only starting to dive into the details of exactly how poorly they messed up this entire process and what they'd allowed the firearms licensing system to become under their watch. So that's really interesting watching this play out in court.
Yeah, it is, isn't it? Because it's taken 5 years for the real truth to come out, and it's only come out because of the coronial inquiry as well. And as you say, the first one worked out, well, the Royal Commission worked out there was a problem. The coronial inquiry now, 5 years after the event, is in actual fact will work out how did the problem happen and what did you do wrong. But that was given legitimacy. The suggestion, do you think the police have held this back deliberately because it doesn't fit their particular profile and their view that all semi-automatic gun owners in this country are potential terrorists?
Yeah, so my parents taught me when I was young that whenever you disrespect or make a mistake, the apology has to be equally as loud as the original one, otherwise that message won't get out there. In this case, we didn't see that coming from police. We had a brief apology to the victims on behalf of police for their mistake, and then that was all we heard from. We didn't see the accountability you'd expect from a public agency who have contributed to the largest terror attack New Zealand has ever seen. They should have been doing an open investigation about and being very transparent about the process of exactly how the Christchurch terrorist was given a license. But what we actually saw was, interestingly enough, one of the police former commissioners was given an Order of Merit award in 2020. That was Commissioner Mike Bush, when he most likely knew about the mistake but had been promoting these law changes. So that suggests to us that they decided, instead of transparently taking accountability for their failure, they would instead keep quiet the errors they've made until the law changes were pushed through, which, remembering, Ardern put them through in 10 days with 2 to 3 days worth of consultation and then a weekend to consider 10,000 submissions. If they managed to actually consider the submissions, that's a level of government efficiency that we've never seen anywhere in the world. So all of that happened, and now 5 years down the line.
It was essentially an executive decree decision. There's no question about that. Mind you, that was the nature of the beast, wasn't it? That's what we discovered Jacinda Ardern was. She was a despot. But carrying on now, what are the practical consequences? Could you explain to us who don't own guns and the rest of New Zealand who sort of look at all people who are promoting your views as and there are plenty of people around living in metropolitan New Zealand, can I say, Hugh, who think that gun owners need to be severely regulated because they don't trust you. What were the consequences of 2019? So what happened next as a consequence of Jacinda Ardern and her executive decree?
So that was actually when I joined Colfo as their spokesperson. So I can speak almost at a personal level around what brought me into this. And the fundamental issue was New Zealanders and licensed firearms owners in particular went from being some of the most vetted and trusted civilians that you could find. We had background checks in order to carry a firearms license. In case the listeners don't know, you had to have background checks from independent people who had known you for a minimum of 3 to 5 years personally and had seen you around guns. You had to do firearm safety checks. Police would come to your home, inspect your home and your security systems before you even were allowed to purchase guns. They did a criminal background check and then mental health checks with your healthcare professional. So we were about as vetted as you could possibly get, which is why we had a degree of pride in being licensed firearms owners, and rightfully so. The Law Society put it really well when they opposed some of the changes that were happening under Ardern following the terror attack, and they said that fundamentally, those laws reversed the innocent until proven guilty foundation of our law and treated licensed firearms owners as guilty and needing to prove ourselves innocent. That's a fundamental change of how New Zealanders look at our legal system. So for us, we went from being people who were just regular doctors, builders, tradies who like to go out hunting on the weekend, had never considered any form of violence or were not dangerous people, were well regulated already, and because police failed to uphold the laws of the day, suddenly the government and police came out strongly and said, our laws are to blame, licensed firearms owners are not to be trusted, and therefore we need to change the laws, and that's what happened.